Hey guys, this is Alex. Thanks for clicking and welcome to this lesson on being versus been. Now, this question was asked by Alejandro on our Facebook page. So Alejandro, pay special attention as this is especially for you and every other user who has trouble with these very common words in the English language. So first, we're going to begin by talking about being. Now, I have 3 sentences on the board and they express 3 different ways to use the word being. So we have Mark is being generous. Yesterday she was being harassed by the police, and being told what to do is not pleasant. So let's look at the first sentence. Mark is being generous. Now, as you can see, this is using being in a progressive tense. Okay? So you can use being and follow it with either an adjective or a noun to talk about how someone is acting. Okay? So Mark is being generous. Again, generous is a word that means giving. Like he's generous, he gives gifts to people, he gives money freely, he is not stingy, is what we can say. Okay? So one way is you can use it with the progressive tenses. You can also say Mark was being generous, or in the future, it doesn't really make sense. It's not used very often to say Mark will be being generous. Technically, you could say that, but it's not very common to speak in that way. So when you're using being in the progressive tense, usually you want to use it in the present or the past. So remember, when you're doing progressive, it's subject, the verb to be, followed by being, and then you can follow that with either an adjective or a noun. So you can say Mark is being a jerk. Okay, so he's not being nice. If you want to make a negative, you can say subject to be, add not and being, and then an adjective or a noun. Okay, the second sentence, yesterday she was being harassed by the police. So here, the subject, she, is receiving the action. Okay, so you can use being in a passive sense. When an action is happening to you or has happened to you in the past, you can use being. She was being harassed by the police. It means the police were harassing her. Okay? So you can say, I was being, let's see, the classic example is the girl hit the ball, okay? Or the girl was being hit by the ball. Okay, so she didn't like being hit by the ball. So if you're using being in a passive sense, make sure you use being followed by a past participle. Okay. In the final example, it's the same thing as the previous one, but we're using being at the start of a sentence. So you can also use being in a passive sense, but you can use it to make generalizations about something. Okay? Being told what to do is not pleasant. Okay? So again, you are not really the subject in this. The person is receiving the action. So being told what to do is not pleasant. Okay, so just to review, you can use being in a progressive tense. Again, follow it with an adjective or with a noun. You can also use it in a passive sense where you are receiving the action. And you can use being to make generalizations. Okay? And when you're using it to make a generalization, you can only do it when you follow it with a past participle, with a past verb. Okay? Now let's move on to been. Okay guys, now let's look at been. So we have 3 sentences on the board. She has been to Alaska. The students had been studying for 5 hours. And she will have been accepted by the college at that point. Now, what do you notice that is similar in all of these sentences? Well, aside from the fact that they all have been in them, they're all perfect tenses. Okay? So we have an example of the present perfect tense. He has been to Alaska. And we have an example of the past perfect progressive. The students had been studying for 5 hours. and we have an example of the future perfect. She will have been accepted by the college at that point. Now here, we're having the future perfect used in a passive sense. So here, again, what we're saying is the college will have accepted her at that point. So she is actually receiving the action from the college. Whereas in this case, he has been to Alaska. This is the indefinite past. Now there are other lessons on engVid that teach you all of the tenses, the perfect tenses, the present perfect, past perfect progressive, the future perfect, and the future perfect progressive. So when you're using been, you're basically going to be using the perfect tenses in the English language, okay? And all of the perfect tenses always, always, always begin with some form of have, okay? So if you're using been, make sure that you're always using have before it. So never say, I've been to Alaska. I have been to Alaska in the past, okay? You would never say, the students been studying for 5 hours. In the past, the students had been studying for 5 hours. Now this is the past perfect progressive. This means that at some point in the past, the students were studying and an action started at this point in time. So this is the present, this is the future, this is the past. They started studying here. They studied for 5 hours. They're continuing to study. The students had been studying for 5 hours, so maybe they're continuing to study even more. Just at this point in time, they had been studying for 5 hours. Now for a stronger example, because again, the perfect tenses are a huge topic, please check out the other grammatical lessons on engvid.com. And if you'd like to check your understanding of using being versus using been, please do the quizzes on engvid as well. Good luck and take care.